Hello, and welcome to MRA's 5-Minute HR Feed, the podcast where we share quick and practical information. In the time it takes you to go grab a cup of coffee, you'll gain insights into hot topics and pressing HR issues. I'm your host, Nicole Morehouse, and we're glad you're listening. Before we start, here's our usual disclaimer that the information being shared is not and should not be considered legal advice. Now let's dive into our topic.
Today we're focusing on it's a new year. We have new laws. There have been some legislative changes that became effective on January 1st. Happy New Year, everyone. I do know that most of our listeners have employees in multiple locations. So a lot of organizations have a large geographic footprint and they have representation from an employee standpoint in multiple locations. With a 5-minute podcast, it would be a little bit challenging, or a lot challenging, to cover every municipality, county, and state in the country. So that won't be happening today, but what we hope to do is highlight new laws and amended laws in locations where most of our listeners have a concentration of employees, whether that be in Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, Ohio, or Wisconsin. So it's high level, but it's meant to be high level because we're going to have some additional resources for you, of course, and ways to get answers from us. But hopefully this podcast lets you walk away with understanding the names of laws that have been amended and new laws that have been enacted, so you can create a list if you're not familiar with those changes to follow up and get more information. So let's get rolling. First, I do want to say, before I dive into our first state here, I do want to just a reminder that there is annual housekeeping that has to be done pretty regularly. We all know that as HR professionals, we're constantly having to make updates to things, but some things happen on a schedule, and January 1st is one of those dates that comes up every year, right? And things such as minimum wage rates often change on January 1st. So if you're an organization that is impacted, that pays minimum wage rates, you do want to make sure that you check your city, county, and state rates where your employees work. Among other things that you want to check at least on an annual basis, do make sure to check some of those. I don't want to call them administrative changes, but they do happen on a regular cycle where you probably already know that you need to look for those updates. The other updates that we're sharing here are pretty significant development, so worthy of expanding on a list. So going first with the great state of Illinois, we're going to be moving through this list pretty quickly because this list is the longest list that I'll go over today, and it is a list. And so I'm going to start with some amendments took place on January 1st. Amendments to the Illinois Equal Pay Act, amendments to the Illinois Human Rights Act, as well as the Personnel Record Review Act, Wage Payment and Collection Act, Right to Privacy in the Workplace Act. Illinois has the new child labor law requirements, new Worker Freedom of Speech Act, and there have been amendments in Cook County to the Cook County Paid Leave of Absence Ordinance. So again, in keeping with our format of 5 minutes, that is high level, and I will share some additional information at the end of how we're going to provide you with guidance and more resources, those amendments and new laws, as well as those that I'll share here for Minnesota. Minnesota is another very active state. I'm not sure if they're in competition with Illinois or Illinois is in competition with Minnesota, but the two states have been keeping us on our toes as it's keeping you on your toes as well if you have employees there. And so in Minnesota, we are seeing amendments to earned sick and safe time. Oh yes, the acronym that we've come to love, ESS, and then also some pay transparency requirements requiring employers to put certain information in job postings. Maybe if we could do like a little drum roll. Spent almost all my time on Illinois, a little bit of time on Minnesota, but when it comes to Iowa, Ohio, and Wisconsin, employers in those states take a deep breath, take maybe a sigh of relief, but there's not a lot going on in those states yet. Again, a reminder to still check on the things that you routinely check on each year, at least once a year, such as minimum wage rates. So this episode is probably leaving you wanting more, and fully recognizing that we're going to publish an article on these updates with more detail in our next issue of Inside HR, which is due out on January 15th. Otherwise, if you need answers now, I do encourage you to contact our 24/7 hotline. You could email us at infonow@mranet.org. With that, I want to thank you for joining us. We hope you can join us for our next episode. Follow us wherever you follow MRA, whether that's your email, social media, or visiting our website, www.mranet.org. Until next time, thanks for joining.
Thank you for listening to MRA's 5-Minute HR Feed. Be sure to follow and connect with us for more podcasts and updates. If you're a member and have questions, you can always connect with MRA's 24/7 HR hotline by emailing infonow@mranet.org or by calling 866-474-6854.